folks. My name is Nikolaus Remus. I'm on staff with AIA Colorado. I'm our Advocacy Engagement Director. I was working with our members of our housing committee, Sean Jursnick and John Glenn, to put together a presentation to help members understand how to implement recent policy changes in the world of housing. There's been some great bills that have passed the state legislature last year, and they open up some great new opportunities, but they are kind of cutting edge and have some very specific rules that are going to have to be followed. We want to make sure people are prepared to incorporate these opportunities into your practice. I will say one more time, as we start advancing the slides, please put your first and last name into chat for attendance purposes. Please mute yourself if you haven't already, and cameras are optional while we're doing the presentation. We are approved for 1 hour of HSW credit, so that will be added to your transcript automatically if you properly do the attendance in chat. So,
1 second, sorry.
yep.
It's not advancing on me. Hold on, I'm sorry, team. I'm so sorry. Why is it not advancing with me? All right. We tested this, didn't we?
Working fine.
There we go. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry.
All right. We're going to just do a quick overview of what AIA Colorado does in the housing policy realm and in general. And then we're going to dig into the meat of the presentation, which is two particular bills that passed last year. House Bill 25-1273, residential building stair modernization. That is the single stair bill. Then House Bill 25-1272, construction defects in middle market housing. That is intended to create a program that will hopefully spur more condo construction in Colorado. And then, like I said, we'll do a little bit of Q&A after each of those sections in case people have questions. So you won't have to hold your single stair questions until the end. We'll pause and answer those questions when Sean is done with his part of the presentation. In addition to myself, we have Sean Jursnick and John Glenn. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. But we have a pretty big group, multiple groups of members here at AIA Colorado that help with our advocacy efforts. So I'm the tip of the spear as our advocacy engagement director. Mike Waldinger, our CEO, has a strong advocacy background from his time at AIA Illinois. And then we have our all-star lobbyist, Jerry Johnson. He's a contract lobbyist. He is doing the heavy lifting at the Capitol when we decide to take a position on a bill that's been introduced. And I work with him very closely on meeting legislators, meeting candidates, discussing bills, sharing our concerns, et cetera, et cetera. And as you can see at the bottom, we've got a pretty big roster on our Government Affairs Committee and our Housing Committee as well. But I'll turn it over to Sean first real quick for his introduction.
Thanks, Nick. My name is Sean Jursnick. I'm an associate at SAR Architects in Denver. For the past couple of years, I've chaired AIA Colorado's Housing Committee, and I'm still an active member on the committee. Excited to be part of that group, discussing all the latest happenings related to housing and how our profession relates to legislation that's being discussed. For the past couple of years, I've been passionate about single-stair housing and been publishing research on the topic and engaging with Colorado and other states that have been writing building code-related legislation related to code changes. So I'm excited today to get into the nuts and bolts of Colorado's single-stair bill.
AI Colorado.
And my name's John Glenn. I am also an associate at Davis Partnership Architects here in Reno and Denver. But I've served on the AI Colorado board at large, and much with Sean here, we both started the housing committee a couple of years ago when we felt like there was a leadership vacuum or something within AI Colorado. And on these important housing issues, we wanted to just step out in front and lead them and kind of help lead the organization and build consensus. And that's kind of why the Housing Committee came together a couple of years ago.
All right, so we are talking about policy that came about because state laws were passed. And so I just want to go over a quick kind of rundown of what our efforts look like at the state capitol. Why do bills look like the way they do? How do we engage? We have our Government Affairs Committee. They are charged with following issues of statewide concern. We are very active in the every legislative session. We have a legislative subcommittee that scans every bill introduced. We have a lot of good friends at the Capitol, but not everyone thinks to reach out to architects before they introduce a bill. So we have to be vigilant and see how bills might intentionally or unintentionally affect the architecture profession. John just talked about the goals and the mission of the Housing Committee, but the basic process is we identify bills of interest, whether we find them or whether they're shared with us by a legislator. And then we have discussions within the GAC and oftentimes the Housing Committee and sometimes the Committee on the Environment, depending on the scope of the bill. Our Government Affairs Committee recommends a position or decides to recommend if they want to recommend a position. And then if they do so, the position request goes to our board of directors. So AIA Colorado does not take positions on any bills at the Capitol until our board of directors has officially approved that position. And when they do, myself, our lobbyist, and when possible, member experts engage with the legislative process at the Capitol. And what this kind of means is that we're not the only group that does this. For housing bills, there's a lot of other players in this realm. They all have priorities and goals. And if you're a legislator considering housing policy, you want to talk with everyone and you try to make every stakeholder happy. It doesn't always work out that way. There's a lot of give and take and compromise at the Capitol. So just want to emphasize that up front. We have two bills that are kind of cutting edge in terms of trying to solve some of our housing problems. They're not perfect. There's going to be some challenges in implementation, and there's always opportunities to go back and change state law if it's not accomplishing what it's supposed to accomplish. But sometimes things get messy during the legislative process, and we end up with what we end up with. Oh, finally, before we hand it over to Sean, every year we also try to bring architects out to have a day at the Capitol. A lot of our government affairs folks and our board of directors are participants in this. And that's Jerry standing up on the left there. He does a great job of organizing meetings with key legislative allies and making sure that we are prepared to share with them what's going on in the architectural profession, and they can share with us what kind of bills they're considering in any given legislative session. We were honored this year to get a pronouncement on the floor by Senate President James Coleman, top center there, recognizing the architectural profession. So it's great to get all of our members engaged in interacting with our state legislators. That really advances our advocacy efforts.
Thanks, Nick, for setting me up here to talk about the single stair bill that passed last year. It was House Bill 1273. Long before the bill passed, AIA Colorado was engaged in conversation with bill sponsors and the governor's advisors about the nuts and bolts of the bill and why it was important and how to execute it successfully, getting input from the architecture profession on how to write legislation addressing the building code in an effective manner. And the bill is legislation that creates the opportunity for more density to be built on small lots in Colorado. It creates legislation that applies to cities around Colorado with more than 100,000 residents that those jurisdictions need to modify their building code before December of 2027 to allow 5-story single-stair residential projects. The diagram on the upper right shows a single-stair building placed on a small lot, and how a single-stair building with units clustered around a central core has a small footprint, and next to it is a double-loaded corridor apartment building with 2 means of egress and units on either side of a corridor, and how that standard multifamily apartment typology doesn't fit on small lots. And that's important because lots of areas in the state have zoning that encourages heights of greater than 3 stories, 5 and 6 stories in urban areas. And often one of the big hurdles to development in those areas is that the building code requires, the old IBC building code requires 2 stairs for any multifamily project being built greater than 3 stories. So this diagram shows how the top floor plate is an IBC allowable apartment that's basically the maximum size apartment you could build under the IBC, and it's longer than a football field. It has 2 means of egress, and this bill sought to craft language that allowed more missing middle scale housing, a small footprint that could be built up to mid-rise height and served by fire departments with fire apparatus and fire ladders. And a small footprint on the bottom is basically how the single stair bill was tailored. That you can't really have a large footprint for a single stair building built up 4 or 5 stories as allowed in the bill, that it's a small footprint, easy to exit, quick to exit. Very different than a standard large apartment building that's really common today. So the single stair bill got some coverage in the press because of its potential to increase housing in neighborhoods and urban areas. And Denver, the city of Denver, watched this legislation very closely, and they became the first city in the state to adopt provisions that comply with the state bill. And I'll dive into Denver's ordinance in a minute, but this is the language of the bill that was passed at the state level. And it basically said about 20 provisions that need to be included in any code change that a jurisdiction makes to adopt the single stair measure. And the big idea is that these provisions limit single stair buildings to having a small footprint. One item being travel distances of no more than 20 feet from an exit stair to an apartment door, no more than 4 units per floor, no more than 6,000 square foot footprint. The bill also mentions construction type as well, and make sure it addresses that type 1, 2, or 4 construction types are allowed. We'll get more into construction type on Denver's code provisions coming up soon. But other measures that kind of go above and beyond standard apartment construction are that electrical outlets are not allowed in exit stairs because of concerns about charging e-bikes and things like that. Each floor requires an emergency escape and rescue opening. It's a large window that fire service could use to get in the building if they needed to get people in or out. And then other common measures like a 2-hour rated shaft for the exit stairway, and also smoke controls required for stair shafts or elevator shafts. And these projects can't have more than 1 story below grade, not more than 1 basement level. So the city of Denver, in watching progress on the bill, their city council, the chief building code official, Eric Browning, and the fire department collaborated to write an ordinance that complied at the state level, but also worked for the city of Denver itself and how fire service operates here. So this is Denver's updated building code that was published in December. And so this excerpt from the code is current if you go online and look at Denver's code. It includes basically all the measures that we reviewed in the state bill, but also adds a few things that officials here thought were appropriate for Denver and important for their access to buildings in Denver. But one key difference in Denver's bill is that in addition to allowing types 1, 2, and 4 construction type for single stair buildings of 5 stories, they also allow type 3 stick framing as well. They felt that was appropriate to allow a very common construction type used all over the city for apartments. And so they've kind of gone beyond the state bill to be even more inclusive of different construction types. They included the same measures for requiring sprinklers, limits on exit distances, floor plate sizes. They also, on top of the state bill, which required the emergency escape opening on each floor, the city of Denver wants an emergency escape opening at each unit in the building. So that's one other difference that Denver folded in. They also want the main entry on the building to include a sign that says this stair contains only 1 stair. So any fire service approaching the building is aware of that immediately. They've also included a requirement that there's not more than 2 of these single stair buildings on a single site. It's the idea that these types of buildings are limited to small sites, and they're easy to access, easy to get people in and out. And then they also have a few provisions specific to 4-story single stair buildings. The idea is, one of the ideas guiding this is that the IBC in the 2027 version is on track to allow 4-story single stair buildings, increasing from what's allowed right now at 3-story single stair buildings. So Denver wanted to just be out ahead of that, be proactive and not wait for IBC's upcoming changes and adopt changes in line with where the IBC will be headed shortly. So one city that's been building this type of housing for decades is Seattle. And so this slide gives an example of, or several examples of what this type of housing looks like in an urban area. And in Seattle, what they've done is build affordable housing, luxury condos, co-housing, student housing on small urban lots that are zoned for height, and built hundreds of single stair projects all across the city. Basically, anywhere that's zoned above 3 stories, they're building this type of product. And they're usually about 10 to 20 apartment units. They're sort of a mid-size scale, often on streets that already have large-scale apartment buildings, or might have townhomes or single family homes as well. So they fit well with the existing urban fabric in Seattle. And the city there has found them to be effective, and they've evolved their building code over the last several decades to include just the latest safety measures for those buildings that they find to be a very safe type of housing. So in addition to Colorado passing a bill last year, over the last few years, other states have proposed and passed bills. This is a map that shows states that have been active at the local and state level in proposing and passing single stair measures. And in each state, single stair legislation that's been debated has taken different forms. Texas passed a bill last year that is an opt-in bill that allows any local jurisdiction that wants to allow single stair, it gives them the code language that they can just pick up and drop into their local ordinances. And Minnesota created a study group that's going to create recommendations for single stair code changes. And then several states this year in 2026 are going to be added to this map, with Illinois, Michigan, Idaho, and Wisconsin all proposing bills. So it's a broad movement that's happening around the country where legislators and policymakers are applying scrutiny to the building code and looking at ways to improve housing options through modifying the building code in ways that they feel appropriate in their states and their locations. So that's really the high level gist on the bill that's been adopted and how the city of Denver has changed their code. Does anyone have any questions on single stair bill?
There's before we get into the questions, there's just two quick things I want to add in addition to that, those great details that Sean was digging into. Not every city in the state is going to be required to allow these taller single stair buildings. The scope of the bill directs jurisdictions with populations, cities with populations above 100,000 people. So, and I believe they have until December 1st of 2027 to create their codes. So you will start seeing this in larger cities across the state. Sean talked about Denver, who was ahead of the curve, who was really excited about the opportunity. Not every large city affected by this bill is going to be as quick getting their own code changes released to the public and in effect. And then the flip side of that is that there's nothing stopping any other jurisdiction from adopting these policies or similar single stair policies. We're a home rule state, which means that local jurisdictions are typically in charge of developing their own building codes, and they can kind of do whatever they want. So if a non-subject jurisdiction is interested in this program, they can certainly opt in, and they will just kind of wrap that into their typical code adoption or amendment process. There was a question earlier from Max Nardo. Sean, are you aware of any other jurisdictions that are thinking about going higher than 5 stories, or is everyone sticking to that right now that you're aware of?
In Colorado, there haven't been any cities discussing going taller than 5 stories. Other states that have passed single stair bills in other cities, they've passed measures to go to 6 stories. And other states are potentially going up to 7 or 8 in legislation that's in the works. But in Colorado right now, it's 5 stories. And then Brian, I see your question on accessibility and elevators and how they relate to buildings of this size. So in Seattle, what's most common is that buildings of this size locate one accessible unit on the ground floor, and that meets the code requirements for accessibility, sort of having a walk-up unit, and one of 20 units being accessible meets the required percentage for accessible units in distribution of accessible units. The building code does not require elevators in multifamily projects. So there are even 6-story single-stair projects in the city of Seattle that have no elevator. They're not very common, but it is allowed by code as their accessible unit is located on the ground floor. Most developers will want to have an elevator in these buildings just to make them more appealing for residents.
I'll tackle Scott's question, and Sean, you can chime in with your view on the ground after I give the high level. A single stair bill was introduced in 2024 that went down in flames because fire marshals didn't feel like they were part of the stakeholder process, and they had numerous safety concerns. And they came in and they killed the bill. And then so in 2025 they were brought in early, as were fire chiefs, and they really put their foot down and said, we do not trust type 5 construction, whether it's whether those assemblies are protected or not. That was basically a line in the sand they drew. And then when the firefighters union came in the middle of the process, they also took the side of the other firefighting groups. So there was strong opposition against allowing type 5 construction. We're stuck with that because that's what got the bill passed, and we probably will be for the near future at least. Now, if these projects start getting developed and the prices are sky high, that will get people's attention. If we see other projects go up in other cities or states, and those projects can kind of demonstrate that the fears of type 5 construction are overblown, there's opportunities to go back and look at more examples of successful, safe type 5 construction buildings up to 5 stories. But we're not going to be able to push back at the state law level until we start seeing how this bill does get implemented and what the safety considerations are. And we'd love to see more affordable single-stair buildings, but that was just not meant to be in terms of getting a bill passed that we can start.
Yeah, I agree with everything you shared there, Nick. And I think one thing to add to it is right now our greatest potential is to push back at the local level, and jurisdictions that are looking to adopt this code advocate for them to allow type 5 and type 3 construction, just like the city of Denver allowed type 3, even though the state bill didn't address type 3 requirements. It would be beneficial if we're able to speak with local jurisdictions writing their code provisions. There's lots of safe precedent to build on allowing type 5 construction for this type of housing. Makes a lot of sense. More economically attractive for sure, and a very safe safety record.
Any other questions before we move on?
Sean, are there site planning parameters that we need to adhere to with a single stair building if you have a larger site, like access to a fire lane or something like that?
Denver's provisions, they did include one provision in there. I believe that like one of the emergency access openings needs to be within 30 feet of a right of way or of like an alley or something like that. So that would keep the building relatively close to any frontage. Beyond that, not really much guidance beyond the measures on like the size of the building.
I'll just add to that quickly. Part of the intent of requiring local jurisdictions to adopt their own specific code requirements that match the state requirements is that the state wants local fire departments to work with their local building departments, local city councils, to make sure that their firefighting capacity and their lots and the character of their neighborhoods, et cetera, they want to make sure that they can access these sites. So you may very well see a variety of different restrictions related to siting at the local municipality level, and that's just going to be part of the discussions of what worked for them to make sure their actual equipment and their actual firefighting capabilities can safely access the buildings as intended.
Yeah, City of Denver was guided about like by them knowing how their fire apparatus works and what their ladder reach is, and being very comfortable with 5-story building 30 feet from the right of way. And I'm feeling very comfortable with that. And I see David adding a question as well. Denver would allow the first floor to be retail and residential above. They don't have limitations on that in their code provisions.
But I suppose you would run up against accessibility requirements you otherwise have, so that would be a consideration, even if it's not, even if this is something that is allowable.
Yes.
All right, shall we move on? All right. The next topic we are going to discuss is House Bill 25-1272, construction defects and middle market housing. This is a bill that is intended to address the shortfall of condominium construction we've had in Colorado for decades, to be honest. And the reason we've had so few condo projects is that we've had some real issues with construction defects and punishing construction defect lawsuits that had a tendency to target everyone involved, whether or not there was evidence to support naming everyone in the lawsuit or threatening people with lawsuits and demanding settlements. And as a result, we have insurance costs have skyrocketed. Everyone involved in these projects is cagey. And since we're a growing state and apartment buildings have historically filled right up, developers are looking to those instead as being a much more appealing way to provide housing in Colorado. So to address this, there's been numerous attempts to address this issue, and they've all struggled because we are ultimately talking about the balancing of the consumer from the consumer protection standpoint of the residents of these buildings. If something goes wrong, they deserve to be made whole. But if no one on the design and construction side wants to do these projects, maybe that says the process for determining how to make someone getting made whole is not working well. And so there's ongoing tension between those two forces. And what we saw last year was an attempt to create an opt-in program that would create an interesting opportunity to prove that you're doing better quality construction and that you're willing to step up and make things right. And in return, you would get better protections against lawsuits. Now, no one else in the country is doing anything like this. So this is, we are in uncharted territory. There were over 100 stakeholder meetings with the sponsors of this bill. So there was a lot of people with a lot of opinions and input. And what we have, even though AIA Colorado supported this bill, is maybe doesn't quite perfectly hit the mark, but it's going to take some time to figure out if it's working or not. And we want to make sure people are prepared to have conversations with your clients to see if this program is right for you. So I'm not going to go through all of these goals, but really the intent is to get more condominiums in Colorado. This project does affect, you can go back ahead, John. This program does technically allow any project of 2 or more units to qualify. So it can be a duplex, it can be townhomes or row homes, it can be a high-rise condo building. So that's a pretty broad scope as long as it is a for-sale project. Before we go into the details of the bill, I just want to make sure people understand some of the other provisions in statute that relate very much to construction defects. And first is definition of construction professional. And this is from the Construction Defect Action Reform Act. Construction professionals are everyone listed here. So it's architects and engineers, it's general contractors, it's subcontractors, it can be vendors or inspectors, not government inspectors. But the intent is that construction professional is meant to be as broad as possible to kind of wrap in everyone involved in the development, design, and construction of a building. And then the other issue at play here is that in the world of construction defects, we have Colorado has statutes of repose and limitations. And so the statute of repose is 6 years in Colorado. That's better than a lot of states. A lot of states have 10 years. There are some states, I think New York, where there's no limit to the statute of repose. So after 6 years, someone cannot file a construction defect lawsuit. There's a statute of limitations, which basically tacks on 2 years to that 6-year period. If the defect is discovered in the 5th or 6th year, that is to give everyone time to figure out what happened, who might be responsible, can it be fixed, and if people can't come to an agreement, there's still time to file a lawsuit. So we're a 6+2 state. This bill doesn't technically change that. But it is intended to kind of work within these existing statutes of repose and limitations to create a better process to deal with issues as they come up. So here's kind of the high-level important things to consider for this program. It began on January 1st. It applies to for-sale multifamily residential projects by any definition of multifamily. There's going to be 3 types of warranties that are going to be required. Workmanship materials 1 year, plumbing and electrical materials 2 years, major structural components 6 years, the full statute of repose. These are good categories, but these are pretty broad, and there's not a lot of detail in addition to what I've put here on the slide in statute. So we are going to see how well this gets documented for buildings that are interested in the program, but these are pretty broad warranties. And then the other big item, which I'll get to on the next slide, is requiring third-party inspections throughout construction. What does third-party mean? Well, it is inspectors hired by the general contractor that don't have any other affiliation with the contractor or the design team. They can be architects and engineers. They can be inspectors that have ICC qualifications. But this is really probably the biggest deal about this program, is that you have to have third-party inspections. They are going to determine if the work performed matches the work that we do. They're going to make sure it meets building code, in their opinion. But the tricky thing here is that the amount of work that they have to inspect is very broad and not very detailed in statute. So contractors aren't sure yet how expensive these third-party inspections are going to be. How many inspectors do you have to hire? How many different specialty inspectors do you need? If they have to have access to the work as it's being performed, how much does that impact the scheduling of the work? There's a lot that's going to be going into these agreements. Even if third-party inspections are already a thing that you see in your projects, everyone involved is going to want to make sure that they are confident that the third-party inspections they do for projects interested in this program meet the program requirements. That's not going to be checked by anyone. It's really going to be up to the inspectors and the general contractor to be confident that they have both met their requirements. And an inspector doesn't just say, hey, I think something's wrong. When they do that, action is going to be required to be taken. They have to sign off on any explanations or corrections. If there's any outstanding issues that survive throughout the construction process, the building probably won't meet the intent of the program, and things could go awry in terms of registering the project. So that's a really important aspect that we don't have direct control over, but these could definitely increase construction bids. And the bigger the project, the more the increase could be, but we don't know what that's going to look like yet. So that's an important discussion to have with your clients up front about like what's the big ask? Well, it's going to increase construction costs and maybe construction durations. How much? We don't know yet. The program just started. So why do we care about this program? This does one really important thing for architects and engineers. Right now, it's very easy to name an architect or an engineer in a construction defect lawsuit and basically say, hey, we're going to sue you, let's settle. And technically, you have to have a third-party architect or engineer say that there's a lawsuit isn't meritless, but that's such a low bar that it practically doesn't exist. For projects that do end up enrolled in this program, the owner who's suffering from a defect actually has to find a consultant to evaluate whether or not they think that there is architects or engineers negligence, and they have to be specific about what that negligence is. So if someone can't find an independent architect or engineer to actually say this is design negligence, then we shouldn't be named in lawsuits. We should be brought into fewer disputes. It should be easier for us to say this wasn't us. You all have to work it out. That should be an improvement over the way things are for architects and engineers right now on these condo projects. Some other benefits are that if all the inspections are performed as they're supposed to, we should end up with better quality projects. We should have fewer construction defects in the first place. That's intended to be win-win, plus the warranties that the general contractor says, yes, we'll be more proactive about fixing anything in those categories in those durations. The other side of things too is when a defect does happen and there is a better process for figuring out what to do with it. There's pages upon pages in the bill about what you have to, steps that everyone has to take, information that has to be shared, options that have to be given. So a contractor might say, look, you don't want us to fix it. We understand that. Here, would you take this some amount of money and you can go fix it on your own? You can't force someone to accept that, but contractors have to be able to offer to do that or to fix the issue themselves. And then there's a whole list of different affirmative defenses where some of these are common law already, but it's nice to see in the bill that we're not responsible for, acts of God, extreme weather events, lack of maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some good details in how to handle disputes when an issue occurs. All right, so this getting a project into a program is no sure thing. You need, technically it's the general contractor that will register the project, and they have to do that before units are offered for sale. So that could be very late in the process. A lot could happen along the way, even if you have the best of intentions. But basically what this means is your client has to want to get engaged. You have to want to get engaged. Your consultants have to want to get engaged, and the general contractor has to get engaged. We can do everything right, but since we're hired up front, we can't control if a project ultimately gets enrolled in the program. So that's a consideration from a liability standpoint. You have to assume, even if you're going to go through the process of trying to get a project into this program, that might fall apart. You're going to have the same liability risks that you have today for sale multifamily projects. And then finally here, I'm not a lawyer. You should talk to your insurance agents and legal counsel if you're interested in this program. It's not intended to totally change the way we do things, but you're probably going to be told, assume the worst and hope for the best. But it's good to bring everyone you work with into the loop as to what the opportunities and potential pitfalls are.
Nick, you are, I would point out though that while you were not an attorney, you did stay at a Holiday Inn last week though, right? All right. So what does this mean so let's bring this around. What does this mean for our kind of general practice and day-to-day practice on these condo projects? And how can we kind of take some of this risk off the table and dot the I's and cross the T's, so to speak? So number one is going to be to talk to your client before you enter into any contract or enter into a proposal and then a subsequent contract with them. You will want to discuss this program and the benefits. There may be steps you may want to incorporate into your contract documents, so you want to let those terms be known up front, just like anything, just any contract negotiation. when negotiating your contract, you want to spell out that you are, as the architect, are designing to these, 1272 standards. Both parties agree that collectively, we want the general contractor to roll in this program and do the inspections and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is all to say, though, obviously we are not a party to, or generally we are not a party to the contract between an owner and the general. But the owner does have control of that third party contract. So if you enter into a contract with your client that says that you want to intend to pursue these additional inspections and protections and stuff, then they have a contractual obligation then on that second part to enter into with the GC. So it's always important to spell out those contractual obligations with the owner, just like we would normally. And then you also want to have your contracts with your consultants aware of this program as well, and that if down the road during CA an inspector finds a defect, you and your consulting team will need to take some sort of corrective action. That may be par for the course for your CA scope anyways, but it's probably beneficial to also spell that in your contracts with your sub-consultants. Okay, so through the kind of SDDD phase really it's business as usual. Again, you want to discuss warranties, and I'll kind of get to that here in the next slide. But really, the front end design development phases don't really change very much as it pertains to this. When we get to contract documents or construction documents, depending upon how you want to call it, there's a couple of things you want to take note of. So in your specifications, you want to write in there that the general contractor is going to is going to cover and perform these inspections. Typically, we've put those in section 014,000, but that the GC will need to retain the condo inspections for this program to go through. And then for warranties, kind of depending upon how you cover warranties in your project manual, whether you put them in section 017530 or in the project closeout, I personally kind of put them in the project closeout section. You also want to spell out the warranty things that Nick alluded to earlier. To reiterate, it's 1 year for workmanship, 2 years for plumbing, electrical, and materials, and 6 years for structural. And then subsequently, our consultants need to also follow those warranty provisions in their specifications and project manuals. You also need to be available for the prospects of service during those warranty durations. So you may want to, when you're building your CA fees, provide a little coverage in case you get a call back to look at a leaky window or something of that sort. Okay, so for your contract administration, your CA phase, we're wanting to do the standard CA documentation like we would do otherwise. It is now on sometimes smaller infill condo jobs. Sometimes the owners like to do I call it like a la carte CA services. I've had that quite a bit where they just call you out whenever an issue arises. Probably not. That's okay probably for a rental product. Or might be okay for a rental product depending upon your risk appetite, but for a condo product, whether it's in this program or not, you definitely don't want to go down that road. You want to make sure that you're being compensated for full CA and full CA documentation and just resolving any and all the standard course of items that come up during that phase. And again, I'm going to reiterate that if a defect is found with the inspector, it needs to be resolved. Nick and I have kind of leading up to this presentation had kind of a philosophical discussion. Well, what if an inspector says that you should flash a window this way and your envelope consultant says, no, that we would never in 100 million years do it that way. We would do it this way, the way that's being installed. That might be a little bit uncharted territory. While it might not be very probable, it's still something to consider that if you don't rectify a potential defect that is identified during the inspection period, you may have to go have a little back and forth between you, your consultants, and then that inspector to resolve that particular issue.
Yeah, the intent is not to let. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say the intent is not to let these inspectors make important decisions. They are interpreting the documents, they're interpreting code, and they're interpreting the work that they see being done. So we are certainly allowed to push back against what an inspector says and say, hey, no, this is okay. I'm a licensed professional. We designed it this way specifically. But you're going to have to defend your argument if you are getting if the finger is pointing at you.
Right.
And even if it's not being pointed at you, the solutions, it's great to catch solutions early, but it may take some work to fix the solutions. And so your contractor may need your help in navigating those corrections, whatever they may be. Again, that happens on construction projects of all types already, but we got to make the inspectors happy on these projects and have a document trail so that if something happens in the future, everyone can go back and say, well, what actually happened during construction? So that's going to be potentially a little more participation during the CA phase. But if everyone's doing things correctly, hopefully things go smoothly.
So that all said, you still need to probably, this is probably best practices, is to have a plan B just in case the GC doesn't follow through with these inspections, doesn't do these inspections or whatever. Obviously, if you're on site or you're, throughout the CA phase, that you're made aware that these inspections aren't taking place, certainly alert your client of that, and protect that paper trail, as Nick had just kind of alluded to. But if they're not, you still want to just probably like you wouldn't otherwise cover your ass and document the project thoroughly like normally. So down the road, if the GC does choose not to enroll, at least you still have that protection. Um, and so really the value proposition here is just to just kind of boil this down. The value proposition is that you are trading off the provision of these third-party inspectors to make sure that the building is all built to code and built to the drawings and specifications. And then the trade-off is there's more limitations on those warranty periods, which I'll reiterate again, 1 year for workmanship, 2 years for plumbing, electrical materials, and 6 years for structural. So you're cutting that warranty back quite a bit. So that's the value proposition. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Nope, I think that's covered it. So while people are thinking of any questions they have about this, there's one closing thought I want to share with everyone is that, again, this is a brand new program. No one anywhere else has done anything like this. How are we going to know it's working? Well, if you do multifamily residential work already, you know how long it can take to get from that initial client discussion to a set of stamped construction documents. And then you have to get through the construction phase. You might get sticker shock on bids, and your client might make a financial decision to say, nope, I can't afford to go into this program. I'm going to roll the dice. Or they might, convert the condos to apartments. That's the thing that happens. Anything that's happening already today can still happen. So just assume that from your standpoint that it's business as usual, but you're hoping that this can make things better. And it's going to take time to see how effective this program is. If we're a few years down the line and there's no projects that are enrolling this anywhere, that's a sign that something needs to be changed. But if it's a slow rollout, some of that is just inherent to how long it takes to get through the development process for these kinds of projects. My gut says you're going to see more interest for lower density projects like townhomes, where you can get the client and the GC can get their head wrapped around how to integrate these inspections effectively into their project pipeline. I know that GCs are not super excited about this. They fear that they're going to be on the hook for more responsibility and have more liability because of this, even though they get protections after the project is completed. They're basically not sold on this yet. So there is probably going to be ongoing discussions about how effectively this works and when we can say, well, we need to fix something and what that will look like. So any questions about this new and exciting and uncharted territory program to promote condo construction in Colorado?
And I would add, take down Nick's email here.
Mm-hmm.
If and when you do one of these jobs,
Ooh, I
reach
want to
out
know
to
about
Nick.
it.
Yeah, we want to hear how it went and how the process went and stuff. I think we would love and value that feedback.
Even if you have that initial client conversation and the client says, "Oh hell no," I'd love to hear that too. That's the more I can hear from members engaging in this process, the better we can re-engage at the state policy level to see what kind of changes might need to be implemented to get more projects into this pipeline and actually get more condo projects in Colorado.
Right. And donate to our political action committee ARC Pack there. There's the little QR code. Break out your phones. I'm looking at
We
some of you. Break out your phones. Let's chip in a little bit so we can help support great legislative candidates that support these efforts and more.
Yeah, really important part of my job is seeing that people who support the architecture profession stay in the legislature, and the best way to help them do that is to support their campaigns when we're able.
Right.
And we need folks to step up and help those efforts. We got a really robust group of people who evaluate good candidates and how we decide who is deserving of a contribution. We contribute to candidates all across the state on both sides of the aisle. We have friends of the profession in both parties on different issues. So your PAC contribution is going to folks that really support the architecture profession, and it's a great way for us to stay engaged. What the protection actually is if you get a project. So what do you avoid? So the protection is, as I noted in one of the earlier slides, it will be harder to sue architects and engineers. More work is going to have to be put into figuring out if we have anything to do with the problem. And so that should be good from a liability standpoint. It's not necessarily going to lower our insurance rates right away. You're still going to have to call your lawyer if something big comes up after project completion. But we should have better protections about getting dragged into the process because someone has to say, hey, we think there's an actual design issue. The other big protection is reinforcement of the 6-year statute of repose, and that we didn't go into this presentation, but there are really some strong protections in how you deal with defects if they occur. So an HOA board can't just hire a lawyer and the lawyer starts taking the whole building apart and says, we're going to sue you and we're going to come after you for all this money. He's like, no, they've got to be more methodical in documenting the issue, informing everyone that there's an issue, sharing appropriate information, letting the people named look at the issue and determine if they think it's covered by warranty, if they think it's their fault, or if they want to say, no, this isn't ours, you have to go after someone else. So there's all these steps in the process that have to be taken to resolve the issue that are not, that don't have the threat of lawsuit looming. But if everything falls apart, consumers still have that option to file a lawsuit, but they can't just go straight to that and hope they can get a bunch of settlements for not a lot of effort. There has to be a open and honest and transparent process to deal with issues as they come up and try to correct the issues without going to expensive lawsuits.
And when the lawyers get involved, we all lose.
And someone might hire a lawyer early anyway, but again, that lawyer is bound by following the process just like everyone else. So they're going to have to act accordingly. And Tara, yes, this applies for anything that is 2 units or more for sale. So that it can be a duplex. If you're developing a single family lot with a home and an ADU, that if the ADU is detached, that might not count. I think it has to be 2 units attached. So and I don't hold me to that, but that's my understanding of things, is that if you have units that are not attached, this is not intended to cover those. It's intended to cover units with some sort of shared walls or ceilings or floors, etc.
Nick, on that point though, would like a townhome that is a single family detached product, right? So you have the air rights, it's just a zero setback on 2 of your sides or whatever. Would that still be an offering into this program, or would that still be or would that be treated as a single family like you were just talking about?
I think the key provision are multiple units, touching each other. Is there any shared building components? That's I think going to be the key. Now, if you've got it's not uncommon for there to be projects that have multiple unit types on the same property. My understanding is that if you've got a set of townhomes and maybe a couple of detached homes on the same property and they're the same development project, I believe you could enroll the townhomes in the program, but any detached buildings would not be
Okay.
enrolled. So you're basically enrolling building projects on a building by building basis, not necessarily on a property by property basis.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. I think we are done.
Thank you all. And again, I'm here to be a resource for members. I don't have the answers to every question, but I'd love to hear feedback on your efforts to get involved with either of these new opportunities for housing projects. We want to see how they're working and where pitfalls might be and unintended consequences. That's all really useful information for our efforts.
And I'll add one last little comment. This is more my editorial, Nick. We didn't talk about this, but in all my travels in AIA circles, I am consistently blown away with the staff leadership here at AIA Colorado. It's just remarkable, and I hope everyone understands that this is remarkable because I don't think most state chapters or components are nearly this proactive in their state legislatures in terms of trying to get good policy passed that helps support the profession and advance our different values and stuff. So thank you, Nick, and the staff on making this happen. So
Thank you, John, and a shout out to all my active members, making sure that I can do the best job I can on behalf of all of you. Sean's a rock star in terms of being a real expert on the nitty gritty of single stair bills, but I've got folks that can pipe up on all sorts of issues in various committees, and that all really helps our efforts too to make sure policymakers understand the real world impacts of the bills they're trying to run. And with that, we'll end it here, and thank you all again for attending. And one last call: if you didn't enter your first and last name at any time during this program, please do so now so you can get credit for attendance, which means an HSW credit if you need it.
thank you, Joseph. All right. Have a good afternoon.